Let's take a moment and talk a little trajectory, shall we? This is the Starlink 6-59 mission. The 6 meaning it's going to the 6th shell of the low Earth orbit mega constellation. And as is the case with all the other flights heading to that shell, it's going to be lifting off from Slick 40 and heading in a southeasterly trajectory once it leaves the Florida coastline. They'll follow that lime green path you see there on your screen, scooting just a little bit east of the Bahamas. Following stage separation, the first stage booster, tail number 1062 in the SpaceX fleet, is going to land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. They have 2 based here on the East Coast, and the one on deck tonight continues to be a shortfall of gravitas. Just read the instructions, getting a little work done in the Bahamas right now. And so shortfall gravitas is really stepping up to the plate, making sure these missions get done in the time frame that SpaceX is wanting them to. In fact, this will be the 70th booster landing on a shortfall of gravitas if all goes well tonight. SpaceX will also be recovering the payload fairings, at least that is their intention following stage separation. As you can see in this picture shown in a SpaceX talk a little bit earlier this year, they float down to the ocean waters, either Atlantic or Pacific, depending on where the launch is lifting off from. They glide down under parachutes. They're scooped up by, on the East Coast, one of 2 recovery vessels named after NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. Tonight they are using the drone ship known as Doug. Here's a picture of what that recovery effort looks like at another sunset opportunity, this one taken last year by the SpaceX crew. We are now T-minus 33 minutes, 13 seconds and counting, which means that if all continues to move as expected, SpaceX is in fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket as we speak. We'll started just about 2 minutes ago now. Quite the history on it, so let's go ahead and give it a rundown. We still have some time before the so-called big vent begins. A little less than 6 minutes. This Falcon 9 booster first began flying on November 5th of 2020. Started off by launching a GPS satellite, something that we all rely on in our day-to-day. I know I certainly do. GPS satellite was called the GPS-3 Space Vehicle, or SV-4. These GPS satellites are built by Lockheed Martin. And this was, as the name suggests, the 4th of the newer version of the GPS constellation. Named after famous explorers, this one was nicknamed Sacagawea, named for the Shoshone woman who guided Lewis and Clark on their famous expeditions in the 1800s. Next up was another GPS satellite for this booster that was on June 17th, 2021, the launch of GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 5. That satellite was nicknamed Neil Armstrong, of course, the first person to set foot on the moon. The 3rd flight of this booster came on September 15th, 2021. An important mission, the Inspiration 4 flight. First time that a Dragon spacecraft chartered a commercial mission, and also the first all-civilian space flight to orbit. Of course, we'll see that Dragon Resilience back in action this summer again. It's been on the sidelines for a while as it has undergone a number of changes and upgrades in order to support the Polaris Dawn mission, which will include the first spacewalk without any government involvement. 4th flight of this booster was its first Starlink mission. That was Starlink 4-5 on January 6th, 2022. There were 49 version 1.5 satellites on board. Fifth flight came on April 8th of 2022. This was the second crewed mission for this booster when it launched the Crew Dragon Endeavour and the Axiom 1 private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. Flight 6 came 21 days, 6 hours, and 10 minutes later on April 29th, 2022. So far, still remains the shortest turnaround for this or any booster. Flight number 7 came on June 8, 2022. Launch for Egypt-based company Nilesat, sending up the Nilesat 301 mission. Flights 8 through 12 were a series of Starlink satellite flights. Those were Starlink 4-5 on July 24th, 4-27 on August 17th, 4-36 on October 20th, Starlink 5-1 on December 28th, and Starlink 5-4 on February 12th, 2023. Flight number 13 came on March 9th of 2023. That was the OneWeb 17 mission, launching a batch of 40 of OneWeb's broadband internet satellites. This marked the third and final dedicated launch of OneWeb satellites for SpaceX. OneWeb completed its Generation 1 constellation with a launch from the Indian Space Research Organization. ISRO launched 2 flights of the Starlink, of the OneWeb satellites. SpaceX was given 3 dedicated flights, and all of those satellites were built right here in Florida at the Airbus OneWeb satellite facility here on Merritt Island. Flight number 14 came on May 27th, 2023. That was the Arabsat 7B, also known as Batter 8. This telecommunications satellite was built by Airbus for the company known as Arabsat. Now provides C and Ku band coverage for Europe, the Middle East, and Central Asia. And then everything from Flight 15 on through Flight 20 were all Starlink missions. Those were Starlink Group 6-7 on the 28th, 6-23 on the 18th, 6-30 on the 28th, 6-38 on January 29th, 2024, 6-44 on March 16th, and most recently, Starlink 6-49. And a little bit of a typo there. That should actually be on April 13th for the Starlink 6-49 mission. Bring you in its place a look at our moon, courtesy of our friend Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions. We are lucky, as always, to be joined by our friends Pete Carstens and Chuck Briggs. This is a view, again, of the moon from Pete's camera. A little taste of what we'll be able to capture as the Falcon 9 takes flight in a little less than 15 minutes. Taking a look at the live chat now, I want to thank the more than 12,000 of you that are joining with us live this Friday night. We know you have a lot of options to get your weekend started, and we're very grateful that you chose to be with us for at least a little slice of it. Also want to thank some folks in the live chat. Channel member and our newest moderator, Callistelia. Appreciate the $20 super chat very much. And I'll echo her sentiment saying, if you haven't done so already, hit the like button to say happy belated birthday to Astro Joe. Happy birthday, Astro Joe. Majority of that is made up by bottom 2/3 of the rocket, the first stage. This particular booster, tail number 1062, again, has flown 20 times before, going for its 21st flight tonight. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin 1D engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen and produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs, which are used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Again, tonight, SpaceX is using a shortfall of gravitas, and this will be the 70th time a booster has landed on that drone ship. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. And that image you see there on the right-hand side of your screen are those deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first, like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the Falcon 9's second stage. At first stage, main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release the latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. The second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage is the Falcon 9, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC burns the same propellant mix, that being RP1 and LOX, same as the first stage. Following satellite deployment, that upper stage engine will ignite a third and final time for a deorbit burn that drives the upper stage back into the atmosphere, where it will burn up and help eliminate the risk of creating unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the rocket, of course, are the payload fairings, which encapsulate the 23 Starlink satellites. The fairings are made up of a carbon composite material, and they are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, and 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two halves of the payload fairing will be recovered a little further downrange using the recovery vessel Doug, named after former NASA astronaut Doug Hurley, one half of the Demo 2 mission, which launched back in May 2020. Upon scooping up the fairing halves, of course, they, along with the booster on top of the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas, will all make their way back into Port Canaveral, where they will be offloaded and brought back to Cape Canaveral, where they'll be examined, refurbished, and ideally cleared. Let's do a quick run through of the launch timeline for this mission before we get to the strong back retract, which is just about a minute away from now, so we'll move quickly. After liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket, the vehicle will pass through max Q at about T plus 1 minute and 11 seconds after liftoff. It's the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. After which there'll be a few different events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff at T plus 2 minutes and 26 seconds, followed 4 seconds later by stage separation, then second stage engine ignition, SES-1, 2:36, followed by payload fairing jettison at T plus 2 minutes and 56 seconds. At T plus 6 minutes and 9 seconds will be the first stage entry burn ignition, that burn lasting 24 seconds in total, slowing down the vehicle dramatically and setting it up for the landing burn just about the 8-minute mark. And the booster should land on the drone ship a shortfall gravitas at about T plus 8 minutes and 22 seconds. The Merlin vacuum engine will cease firing at 8:41 point. We'll go into a coast phase until about T plus 54 minutes and 8 seconds. There'll be a 2-second burn, which will set up Starlink deployment at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 17 seconds. And as you just heard from that announcement, we now have mission audio coming in from SpaceX and some pad views to share with you, as the strong back retract callout was just made. Again, that starts with the clamp arms opening up underneath the payload fairings, and then the strong back will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. You can see those clamp arms opening up there on your screen. Just a quick bit of housekeeping here. You can see our countdown clock at T-minus 3 minutes, 45 seconds, just about 11 seconds ahead of what you see from SpaceX at the bottom of your screen. Reason for that is our countdown clock is in real time. The feed coming in from SpaceX is on a slight delay, so that's why there's that little bit of discrepancy. Now about 20 seconds away from the first stage liquid oxygen tank loading completing. And as you can see from this view here, sunset was within the last 20 minutes or so. So all things being equal, we should have a very pretty liftoff coming up in less than 2.5 minutes now. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button. Allow some more folks to find their way in, as we are now less than 2 minutes from liftoff.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
And with that call out, SpaceX has now fully fueled their Falcon 9 rocket. That venting you're seeing here on your screen are the ground gas closeouts, as we're now just about a minute and a half from liftoff.
Ground gas closeouts.
As we're coming upon the final minute of the count, I want to thank a few more folks real quick here. Thanks to James Spencer, Mike Didzik, Rick O, Malcolm Darwin for each gifting $5 super chats, as well as channel member I Am Lita saying hello, Spaceflight Now family. Thanks for all you do, Will, team, and mods. Always great to be watching here with you all. And we will come back to the live chat on the other side of the liftoff, but for now we're going to focus on the rocket. As you just heard, the vehicle is in startup, and we are waiting for the launch director to give their go for liftoff in moments.
SpaceX launch director, go for launch.
And there's that final go for launch call. We are now less than 30 seconds away from SpaceX's 36th Starlink mission of the year, Starlink 6-59. 20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Entered ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. Now 15 seconds into flight. And a beautiful ascent of the Falcon 9 rocket lifting high above Florida's Space Coast. We're getting some great views from our tracking team here. This view from our tracking camera here at the press site. Falcon 9 now traveling faster than the speed of sound. Coming up on max Q, one of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. There's the call out for max Q. Coming up on a few different events in fairly rapid succession here. We'll have first stage main engine cutoff at about T plus 2 minutes and 26 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation 4 seconds after that. 6 seconds after that will be the second stage engine ignition, and then fairing deployment at about 2 minutes 56 seconds. This view from Chuck Briggs and now Pete Karstens. Coming up on 2 minutes into flight. So far, all appears to be nominal with this Falcon 9 mission. Here, call out for MVAC chill down. They're thermally conditioning that Merlin vacuum engine and preparing it for its ignition following stage separation. And there you see Miko. Still a great view of the Falcon 9 rocket with the sun hitting it. Stage separation and second stage engine ignition. And looks like we're going to get a really nice jellyfish effect here. Look at that. Coming up on fairing deployment. There go the payload fairings. Of course, the Falcon 9 flying high enough that it's still able to reflect the setting sun here, and so we're getting a really nice jellyfish effect, which is essentially what you're seeing here on your screen, the setting sun hitting the plume of the Falcon 9, both first and second stage, creating that almost aura around it. And those bursts you're seeing and the big box on your screen, those are from the Falcon 9 first stage. It's the cold gas thrusters, helping to adjust the attitude of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. We should continue to get some great tracking shots through a lot of this process tonight. The lighting conditions are basically exactly what you would hope for on a night like tonight at this time of day with this few clouds. As we're now a little more than 4 minutes into flight. Still very visibly seeing both the payload fairings, the Falcon 9 first stage booster, which is at the bottom of your screen in the big box. At the top is the Falcon 9 second stage. Excellent job by the tracking team here, and seeing some really nice onboard camera views from the Falcon 9 rocket as well. That top right box is the Falcon 9 first stage, of course. You can see the hypersonic grid fins extended. That little more than 5 minutes into flight. The bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you can see the Merlin vacuum engine continuing its burn, and from its vantage point, the sun has not quite set over the horizon line of the Earth. Coming up on 5.5 minutes into flight, the next event we're expecting is the first stage entry burn beginning at about T plus 6 minutes and 9 seconds. Still got good eyes on the Falcon 9 second stage here, or on-ground tracking camera. There's a view from our Adam Bernstein's camera here at the press site. Just a hint of a dot, but still visible above the cloud line here from our vantage point at the press site. You see the start of that entry burn. going in between some cloud layers from Pete Carson's vantage point here. Energy burn is wrapped up in real time, about to end on SpaceX feed as well. With the conclusion of that entry burn now, we are 7 minutes into flight, less than a minute away from the first stage landing burn beginning. You can see the speedometer on the Falcon 9 first stage booster continuing to plummet rapidly as it makes its way down towards the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. I call the Falcon 9 first stage booster transonic, or traveling below the speed of sound. In real time, we're just a few seconds away from the start of that landing burn beginning. The time you want to look for right now is the SpaceX clock at the bottom of your screen. It should start at about T plus 7 minutes and 59 seconds. See that burn starting right on cue. Views from the drone ship should be coming up momentarily on the right-hand side of your screen. And for a 21st record-breaking time, Booster 1062 is down on the drone ship.
Impact shutdown.
And as we always do, with a look at our mission stats as they now stand, with a good liftoff and landing of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. This was the 21st flight of 1062. Well on its way now towards certifying up to 40 flights. This was the 336th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 51st Falcon 9 launch of 2024. This was the 279th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This is SpaceX's 52nd launch of 2024 when you factor in the third integrated flight test of their Starship rocket. Of course, if you're following the SpaceX program closely, you know that they're well on their way towards Flight 4, and they have a fully stacked Starship down in the Boca Chica area at their Starbase facility, waiting on FAA approval, of course. This was the 115th SpaceX orbital launch in the last 365 days, the 186th orbital launch from Pad 40, and the 241st overall orbital launch from this pad to date. Here's where the bar chart stands. Oh, we're going to some recovery stats first, excuse me. This was the 70th landing of a booster on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas, marking the 241st SpaceX drone ship landing and the 309th overall SpaceX booster landing to date. Here we have our bar chart look at the SpaceX Falcon flights on the year so far. Just 10 away from catching the total number of launches from all of 2022. It's well on its way to breaking that record. And finally, in mission stats from around the world, we have this is the 37th overall orbital launch from Florida this year, the 57th orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 58th orbital launch from U.S. Rocket Company. We've got Rocket Lab coming back in action with a pair of launches first of which is coming up no earlier than May 22nd down in New Zealand. Getting ready to add another one to that total. This was the 94th orbital launch from around the world, with one partial mishap and one complete launch failure. This is what the pie chart looks like right now. The US with 57 missions on the year. Russia with a launch yesterday, bringing its total up to 7. China with 22 and a partial mishap. Japan with a complete launch failure and the 2 asterisks there. India and Iran each have 2 orbital launches so far in 2024.